Charlie Gregg here, speaking on behalf of American Eagle Gold, and talking about the NAC Porphyry Copper Gold Project in central BC. Just re-recording this because the recording we made at the MEG mini symposium in Vancouver, the quality was a little bit low. Well, obviously, with me speaking, probably the quality always is pretty low, but I meant the video and audio quality. So I'm redoing this today for you, and well, hang on to your hats. Here we go. NAC Porphyry Copper Gold Project, Central BC. Okay, going to make a few forward-looking statements. As I said at the symposium, I always make some backward statements, and I will actually make some backward-looking statements as well. And that's kind of the point of this talk, is to look backward a little bit and then look forward to what we're doing and give you a review of what American Eagle Gold has been up to. Here we go. This is a nice kind of I guess a why am I getting tongue-tied here? Anyway, it's a here we have a layout of the talk. It's actually not what the talk is laid out like. I had to send this in early for the thing to get printed out, for the binder for the talks to get printed out, and I kind of changed up the talk afterwards. So it's not really going to follow this format, but that's pretty standard with me. So here we go. Let's just get into it. And one of the things that's really important about this project, and you can't really emphasize it enough, is its location and its location relative to infrastructure. So it's in a known kind of mining jurisdiction. The Bell and Grand Isle mines that were produced in the previous century, actually not that long ago, in the 80s and 90s, maybe even a bit before that. We're good producers. And they're right in this belt. They're the same age. NAC is the same age as that, and they're to the south of us, down on Babine Lake. So we're not far from the town of Smithers, and also not far from the towns of Houston and Burns Lake. So great infrastructure. It's easy to get to the property. You can drive to it. Although we normally go from Topley Landing through to near Grand Isle and then take the ferry across, the barge actually, across, but very good access to get there. Obviously, a mining jurisdiction, people know, what kind of wealth mining can bring in the area. So it's great. Those mines were successful. And the other side of this is you can drive right to the property, and it's an area of low elevation, low relief, so workable year round. And we're drilling from a logging clear cut. Amazing for BC when you think of the Golden Triangle and the rugged terrain there. So a great place to work. We got a great logging camp as a base. And a part of BC that's very workable. So just to note, we're in the Babine Porphyry Belt. We kind of, at this point in time, have the belt buckle, the jewel in the crown, so to speak. But we have some great neighbors too. We have a sizable land position, sizable enough to kind of encompass that whole mineralizing system. But we got some great neighbors like AMEGF, who have their Duke project pretty much surrounding us and going north and south a long way. And of course, them being great partners, we wish them the success, and they've already had some success on that. So also have neighbors like ArcWest and Commander shown in the green and red there, respectively. So great part of the world to work, great neighbors, and active exploration. So just a little bit further about this. This is an image from the early 2000s, 2002, showing the property, and that's the outline in red. So a sizable property, kind of 4 by 5 kilometers, plenty of room to encompass the NAC system in its entirety. And in this image, you can see a whole bunch of, small little clear cuts, I guess, if you want. They're really just drill pads. So those are from the historical work. There was a lot of work done there, beginning in the 60s, but mostly shallow drilling, and quite a bit in the mid 90s, 95, 96, by an outfit called Hera. exploration. So that's the NAC property back in 2002. And this is an image of it more recently. And you can see that clear cut right in the middle. Um, that is where pretty much all our drilling, except for maybe one hole, was done by. So huge advantage for us, much, much less expensive drilling when you don't have to helicopter your rig in and helicopter the guys in and out, or put in bush trails and that kind of thing. So those exist on the property, and that's a possibility for sure. And we may have to make use of that to some degree, but almost all of our drilling has been from this clear cut. So huge advantage. And that is exactly what it looks like when you look to the northwest. So you see that hill in the background. That's probably the highest relief. We don't even drill on that. We drill on this side for the most part. So, or for the entirety part. So we're drilling from the clear cut. I think you might be able to see a rig in there somewhere. Maybe that's it right there. But very low relief, 250 feet of relief on the property. So, nice, gentle topography. And this is a view of the logging camp we've been working out of. Tatsa, who runs the logging camp, are really great partners and really helpful. It's a great camp. Our drillers and our geos and our geotechs have their own rooms with their own shower. It's just it's like a luxury for for bush work in BC. Our core shack is over in this corner here, so lots of room to lay out core. A great place to work, and excellent partners, and about a little less than an hour up to where we're drilling. So very convenient. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into the exploration and the history part of it. So the history does go back a long way, and this image is kind of an image looking in the same direction as that photo I took overlooking the clear cut, and the clear cut would be right in the middle there. View to the northwest, and that's that hill of higher relief. And this is, foreshortened, so it looks a little higher, but it's not really any higher. It's probably a little lower, and only 250 feet of relief up to this margin of the property. So we're drilling kind of right in the middle. Most of the drilling has been along this feature. So this is an image of IP chargeability overlaying on topography, and you can see that sort of chargeable zone going down through. But we're going to focus mainly on this interior zone. And I think it's important to note that image sort of reproduced here, just a plan view in this case, was produced way back in the late 60s when Noranda first started exploring this property. And so that geophysical signature of the NAC system, and the outside property boundary is way out here, as I'm outlining with the cursor. That's been known for almost 60 years, and it's also been recognized that it was quite a big system. So this is from a paper that was published by Carson and Jambour in the early 70s, early to mid 70s. And they recognized that, and it was pointed out that even within the Babine Porphyry belt, where Bell and Grand Isle and the Morrison deposits and a few other occurrences had been known, that this system was sizable, kind of one of the biggest ones, and attracted a lot of attention because of that. And on this image, I've sort of shown what's presently known as the outline of the Babine Porphyry in here, and it's not really that well established. I should have mentioned that in this belt there's a lot of till cover, so thick till cover, very little outcrop, and so the actual outline of this is not that well established. Quite well established on the west side where there's a lot of drilling, but not so well known elsewhere. But that's kind of what it was known as. And another point about this, again, this is an outline of that same chargeability halo there. That is these reddish blobs in here are the pit outlines, of the resources on Bell, Grand Isle, and the Morrison deposit. So you can see that there's lots of room inside this chargeability ring for, a deposit or even deposits. So I think that's a key things to keep in mind. And then the other key thing I think is this outline that I've put on here, and it's not really an outline of anything, but it's just to highlight that within that chargeability ring, and again, we've sort of drilled mainly down this west side here, and historical operators kind of focused on that in a shallow sense before, but very prospective looking geophysics here. And again, not exactly a direct targeting tool, but it does give you a sense that there's quite a bit of exploration potential in that northern part that's been very little tested. A few holes by Hera up here that had carried actual grade, near surface, but very shallow. So nice chargeability still there in a shallow depth within the larger chargeability ring that, is presumably associated with higher pyrite and pyrite contents and not necessarily something we really want to focus on. That's where most of the work, the bulk of the work has been done historically, that square. And the other thing is that this is kind of where we've sort of done at the end of last year had the most drilling. So this is where we have most of the info geologically, and I'm going to use that kind of as the basis, and did use that last year to present our view of the geology as understood because we had the most holes along that segment. So, again, emphasizing this, we're going to come back to that area by the end of the talk. Nice chargeability there, but also modeled high mag signature in there. So that is a really nice, a good higher mag signature, but not maybe as high as some parts of the stock. But combined with that IP chargeability, we really like that area. Okay, so this is kind of what I came up with last year, the sort of framework for the geology. Fairly simplified. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but we had a sequence that dips gently easterly or east-northeasterly, with conglomerate in the middle, fine grain, largely sedimentary rocks above, and then also fine-grained, largely sedimentary rocks below. That may be changing a little bit. Maybe this lower contact is of much more rugged or higher relief angular unconformity. We're not 100% sure on that, but it's kind of looking like that. And then everything intruded by a number of different suites of dikes, some earlier, some later, and then this big Babine biotite feldspar porphyry. And again, we know it quite well out on the west margin and the western contact with all our drilling, but not as well as you go to the east. So it's sort of schematic. And you can see this was, what we based the geology on was this section in the south, and we had 4 holes, and they're pretty deep holes. I mean, they're pushing 900 meters. So going down a long way and getting a good sense of thing, but they look close together, but they're still quite far apart. So they're about 100 meters apart, these two, 11 and 8. So what did we find? Well, this list kind of talks about it. We basically found that the conglomerate was generally better mineralized than the rocks above and below, for the most part, but there was a close association between mineralization and the dikes. So the combination of where the dikes were placed into the conglomerate, was sort of the best place to be. And it was actually outboard of the stock. So all the dikes, or all but I think one phase of the dike, seemed to bring in mineralization, as did the stock. But in general, the stock doesn't really make good enough grade, and it's kind of outboard of that made the grade. And I think that's kind of held true through our drilling this summer. Okay, so there you go. There's an example of hole 1, and the little window that shows me on this kind of is in the way, but up in the top of hole 1 and some of the other holes out, this is this historic southern zone that was outlined even by the Hera drilling. They had a south zone where they did an informal resource, and a north zone that they did an informal resource on. And the south zone was more gold rich, and the north zone was more copper rich. And so far, that's kind of held together as well. So kudos to those guys. But this is an example in hole 1 where We had some very good grade up high, but mineralized all the way down, in the stock, a little more sparsely mineralized. So then we drilled, I think this is hole 8. And again, it drilled out of the south zone, gold rich mineralization, but nice. That's a line showing 0.2 copper equivalent. So it's kind of a cutoff type grade, and you can see somewhat spiky, but really continuous mineralization in that hole coming out of the stock and the stockwork south zone, quartz stockwork south zone, at the top. And then we step out a little bit and we're kind of coming out of the south zone in hole 11, but really nice coincident, min coincident with the conglomerate there, also in 8 as well. So it does go, above and below, but commonly it's quite nice in the conglomerate host rocks. And then at the end of the year, we drilled hole whoops, I'm going backwards, sorry. Get those back out there. We drilled hole 17 obliquely across this, and confirmed that and got even higher grades. So we know it goes in and out of the section because that was drilled in and out of the section from north to south. And it looked really good. So some tremendous grades there. Obviously, some really nice greater than 1% copper equivalent kind of things over some good intervals. So, continuing with the geology again, this is like a scatterground, looks like pickup sticks. It's probably not exactly like this, but hey, we just had this one section, 2 holes, about 100 meters to the north. So it seemed to be the same kind of things, a whole bunch of suites of dikes, almost all of which brought in min, cutting this sequence of finer grain rocks, the conglomerate in the middle, and then finer grained rocks above, all cut by the porphyry, but the porphyry itself cut by some suites of dikes. Some features here. I'm not going to go into all the host rocks, but these are obviously the conglomerates, a bit, a variation in the alteration within those. And some nice big chunky chalcopyrite veins here and there, but lots of disseminated mineralization as well. So another feature I'll just mention quickly, and we'll come back to that later, are these things that we called locally copper dikes. And the reason we call them copper dikes is they have a lot of copper in them, and varies somewhat, but generally very great grade, actually right within the dikes and marginal to them. So they come in, they bring grade in marginal to them, and within them, they're quite K rich, as you can see here. Some of them are extremely K rich, and in core, as you can see on the left hand side here, the wall rocks look way more veined and altered, and the dikes look like they should be post-mineral things, but they actually run better than the wall rocks commonly. So, you got to be looking closely to see the min in them, and it's generally bornite. So really unique things. And the other unique thing in this, you can see this in this etched view, so it's about the same width as these, just views of the core, is this one's etched and this is fresh, but you see these muralitic cavities. So they actually have the min in the muralitic cavities, and as disseminations probably replacing mafics in them. So these monzonite kind of series dikes, really important and significant feature. They're kind of scattered in the south, not tons of them, but they're there, and we see them all throughout the system. And a very, very interesting feature. They're quite late, and you even see them cutting the stock. So, kind of a suggestion that there's pre-stock mineralization and post-stock mineralization, maybe then more than one center at Nax. So continuing on with this, the dike theme, more recently we've been working up the dike geochemistry. This is work done mainly by Nick Dudek, who works with us, and he's used all kinds of fancy computer manipulation to come up with these different suites. And we're trying to match what we've logged in the drill core to the geochemistry, and it's a work in progress, but it's coming out nicely. And you can see we're sort of subdividing in geochemical space what we see in in drill core. So that's kind of working out pretty well and validating what we're seeing. And, sometimes it's not a one-to-one match, but we're working through it and it seems to be working out very, very well. So, just looking at his workup. And again, I'm not the guy that knows all the details about this kind of thing, but the basics of this is, well, we got a whole bunch of these dike suites, we're trying to bring them together and make less and combine them as suites, and I think we're able to do that. But you can see that just about all of them bring in grade, and there's one group here that are sort of post mineral, but the other ones are either mineralized by later hydrothermal solutions, or some of them, like this copper dike series here, really do bring in very good grade within the dikes, and marginal to them. So they're almost all bringing in grade. Some of them, like the copper dikes, contain really good grades. So kind of an interesting validation of what we saw originally last year. And then continuing with this, we're able to sort of break out some of the stratigraphy even on this, even in the conglomerates, which really surprised me. I was kind of saying, well, don't use the four acid stuff to try and subdivide conglomerates, because they're made up of a bunch of different things. But there actually are some class types that are fairly uniform within the conglomerate. So it seems to be working even in that, which is kind of cool. And we're using that to help us with our log geology to build a geologic model, and that's what we're trying to do. Start with a lithologic model, move on to an alteration model and a model of the mineralization and the sulfide speciation and a structural model, and put it all together and use that to help us explore as we move forward here. So here we go. Like there's your pickup sticks model. That's the drilling, and we're just kind of rotating through and rotating around so that we'll be looking kind of more, we're sort of looking to the southeast there. We're swinging around and to look more southerly, and now to the southwest, and now we're going to rotate back. And you can see most of our holes are along that sort of north-south trend that was on the west side of the stock. And I'll show the geology here shortly, but most of our holes are the longer holes, and the historical ones, are much, much shallower. And we've had success, obviously, drilling along that western side. So just throwing on, some of the preliminary data. It isn't using the data from all the holes we've drilled. Obviously, you can see one's off the north here. We haven't even got the results back. So these are some of the stratified units. These are the conglomerates, and we've been able to subdivide. Nick's been able to pull out in the geochemistry some differences between an upper conglomerate and some lower stuff. You can sort of see it thickening as you go to the north. And then, the blank area would be where the stock is, but I'll put on a few other features. There's some mafic dikes in the south that wing through. We're not sure yet. Those might even predate the development of that unconformity at the base of the conglomerate. So there's some interesting things coming out of that. And then what do we got here? I think I bring in the stock here. So even geochemically, Nick's been able to sort of pull out a couple of phases out of the stock. Again, this stuff to the east, where the shallow drilling is, that's not really well constrained in terms of lithology or any geochemistry, to be honest. It's all focused right along the western side where we've drilled into it. So that's kind of a work in progress, but the two colors are those two different phases. Then there's some later dikes that are just coming out in the red and the kind of turquoisey blue-green there. So, we're using the geochemistry and the geology. And how do we do that? Well, we're doing kind of conventional model building, and all the geos. There's four of the key loggers shown there, all working on their sections that they logged during the summer, and compiling some of the previous logging and building things section by section. So we're going to use their sections, and we're doing that right now, and the geochemistry to kind of build a lithologic model to start with, and then we'll move on to alteration, etc. So we're doing a combination of sort of more computer driven stuff along with the with a conventional cross-section building, and we're going to build a lithologic model. Okay, so let's go back to the start of this season and kind of walk you through what we did. This is a plan that was kind of put together by our mighty leader, Tony, and Tony Moreau. Great guy, great promoter. Obviously, he's done a great job given all the investments by South 32 and Tech. Anyway, thanks to Tony, no pressure here. This is kind of what he had laid out for us. So 15,000 meters, connect the two zones, the south zone down here to the north zone. Let's try and do that this past season. Drill some more around, the stockwork zone, that nice near surface high grade gold copper rich stuff. So try and do that, and then no pressure. Find the copper jewel box at depth. Thanks a lot, Tony. Anyway, so we're working on that, and then build scale by pulling it all together, and maybe test out some other areas. Expand the northern and southern. So what happened? Yeah, we drilled 21 holes, 16,000 meters. Yeah, we just about completed, a nice link in the north and south zone. We did a bunch of drilling there in the south zone, getting there in terms of the jewel box. So we pumped a few holes out in that way, and building some scale, drilling, getting out toward the north and drilling out this way a bit, and to some degree, getting out toward this embayment zone, a historically noted zone. So here we go. Let's just walk through it. There's what Noranda did. They discovered the property using stream sediment sampling and then following it up with a traditional kind of soil geochem, prospecting, trenching, and then some very, very shallow drilling in the 60s. So kudos to them. And then, in 95, Hera Resources came in with a pretty big program. Again, pretty shallow drilling for the most part. Don't really get below 200 and 250 meters. One hole a little bit deeper than that. That's about it. And they did 2 seasons worth of that. So by the time they kind of got in the second season, they were focused on the southern part. That was the nearest surface, best mineralization in that south zone, and they tried to drive it down with variable success to the south, but along that kind of trend is where they focused. And in 2008, Copper Ridge kind of came in here, and they just drilled one hole really in this area. They did a few holes down farther south without too much luck. But it was a very, very tough time, obviously, in the markets, etc. And then, the next major phase of drilling work is not until we came in 2022. And this was kind of driven by Tony's uncle, Gary Artmont, and Steve McMullen, a geophysicist, that kind of looked at the data, including a ZTEM survey, which was run quite a bit previously, and they thought they could see this thing going to depth. So they put a plan together that we executed for them. And they were mainly pretty deep holes along this north-south trend, ZTEM trend that had a coincident mag and IP chargeability, elevated IP chargeability. And we hit mineralization going a long way down deep with 7 holes. So what did we do last year? Last year, we went and did a few things. We did a hole out this way, kind of a spec hole. That was a heli-supported one. Found out that was quite a bit more expensive than driving on and drilling. And another thing we wanted to do was, because we recognize this north-south trend, well, let's try and drill some holes across it and see, what it is. And that's what I just presented to you previously, that section that was kind of through here, a couple holes to the north, and that kind of confirmed what we saw there. And then we tested a little bit up with 3 holes up in the north zone, that historical copper zone in the north. So drilled across the main trend and got a better sense for what was going on and built sort of a geologic model. So what did we do this year? Drilled a number of holes throughout the program across this stockwork zone and tried to expand that outward, and successfully did that. including, tracking things out this way. So, we put this hole out not long ago in a news release, hole 28, and there you can see the good gold up high. Not entirely like the quartz stockwork, but still with good grade and shallow lead, but also seeing some pretty darn nice grade. More than pretty darn nice. Down deeper, a little weaker between, but definitely pushing things out that way. So that was one of the things we were trying to do. Then the other thing was to link the north and south zone, and to track the those zones out. So, doing that work out that way. I should back this up a little bit, but I'm sort of showing two sections through here along holes that we drilled this year. So I'll just back it up. There's 28, and then again, we're going to show these holes up north. So first of all, with hole 27, drilling kind of beneath 12 and showing that you have pretty good continuity from the good hole in 12 in the copper zone. And then 14 was a bit of a weaker hole. Last year drilled to the west, but it had some pretty nice grade in the center of it. And then drilling 30, stepped out. Maybe we stepped out a bit too far, a little bit weak in parts here, but it definitely confirms that this grade that you see in 14 in here, outboard of the stock. So the stock contact would be in here. We don't hit it until we get down near the bottom there. So it's sort of sitting in there, but the grade sits outboard of the stock. And I think we can drag that very close to surface, and we can track that all the way down, and it's coincident with a bunch of these dikes. So I think we're sort of seeing the same things, a zone that goes way down to depth that runs outboard of the stock from south to north. And we mostly got that complete. And then we kind of confirmed that with this hole 24 that drills south to north out of the south zone, all the way kind of along that trend, maybe a little bit starting a little bit to the east of it, and maybe a better section is a little bit farther out here. But I'm just showing a section that we drilled that didn't present but put together, that goes from north to south during the drill program. So just to illustrate that, let's show a section along the trace of hole 24 in green there. So and then we're going to talk a little bit about what people are probably pretty anxious to see is some of these serrate intrusions that we didn't really see much of down to the south, but we see quite a bit of in three of the holes to the north. That we don't have the geochem back yet, but we hope to get that very shortly. So let's look at the section through 24 first, and it extends right along that way. So we're looking parallel to the stock. So here it is. This is an aerial looking down on the clear cut. Hole 24 was collared down here, drilled to the north. This is a long section, south on this end, north on this end. That's that hole 24. So it collared, in the quartz stockwork, the south zone, and it drilled up toward this serrate texture stuff that everybody's probably pretty anxious to see. And you can see the serrate texture is just coarser grain plage, and then kind of a general decrease in size of the feldspar phenocrysts, and quite crowded with them. And then these clots that contain bornite disseminated all through it, and local, bornite bearing veins as well. So here we are drilling this kind of cheater hole down along the section. But one of the things I loved about it is, it shows that, yeah, there's some pulses in the mineralization, but there's good mineralization all the way from south to north. And I'm damn sure that once we get going, we'll be able to fill in some more good pulses, weaker here and there, but overall, very consistently mineralized. So there we go. There's what we get. You started just on the north end of the south gold zone in the south, and then that's your 0.2 line, a little bit weaker in a few spots, but some quite a bit stronger in other spots too. So overall, a pretty nice, consistently well mineralized long intercept, and you see that all the way along. except for it's a bit weaker down here. And that's because we've kind of cut that section within the stock. There's mineralization in the stock, but generally it's a little bit weaker, seems to strengthen a little bit to the north, but you can see, that it does generally dip steeply to the west. So there's that stock area outlined in the oval. That it's generally weaker. So if we had actually cut the section a little bit farther west on the south end, then we'd probably show better grade. Well, we definitely would show better grade because it cuts through the good part of 17 and those kind of holes. So just for illustration purposes, and then of course, this whole hole 38 drilling north, that will extend that section, and we'll be seeing quite a bit of this kind of stuff up in the north, which is exciting. So looks pretty darn good in the north, and it does kind of look like it's getting better. So here we are, we the north. We are not the north, we are the west where we're drilling, but we do have a lot of our management, including Tony, based in Toronto, which of course is the north, or is that the east? Anyway, it's exciting what we're seeing in the north, and that's this disseminated bornite in some of these kind of bleached looking pale intrusions. They're actually fairly high K, but they have this kind of sericitic and to some degree argillic overprint, just very pale looking, consistently containing this great disseminated mineralization. Really excites some of our core loggers. As you can see in the lower right there, there's a close-up of the serrate texture stuff. Lots of goodies in there. Closer view, that's that same view as I showed in the previous slide, cored by bornite here, and then that nice serrate texture with some bigger kind of zone feldspars, and then finer grained serrate texture there with kind of decreasing feldspar phenocryst sizes. Okay, so back to this view. We saw this before. This is IP chargeability, the outline of our property out here. That's the chargeability ring, pyrite, pyrrhotite. And this is the area that I outlined, just to focus on. Hey, we got chargeability inside the ring, which is kind of what we saw down here. It's not super well displayed in this image, but it's kind of outboard of the stock. There's a coincident mag, and there's good mag in there. I think I show the mag here. Oh yeah, well, anyway, that's hole where we first started seeing this serrate texture stuff. I think it's in hole 35. 33 we saw it into, and that's 38. So we haven't got the results back yet. So we're just sticking our toe in the water with these holes, but we're seeing these goodies in there, and I want to emphasize that this, to me, is looking like an exciting place to explore because it's still got chargeability. And it has, mag in there. There we go. There's the mag. So that's sort of high mag, coincident with the stock and with the magnetite alteration around the stock. So, you also see in these rocks that they're sericite altered. So I like to see the mottled mag there, which looks to me like, okay, maybe some of these solutions that are bringing in and upgrading this copper, are also affecting the mag. So we're just putting our toe in the water when it comes to these holes, these northern holes, and some pretty exciting territory to explore up there. Anyway, one more slide after this, but I did want to say thanks to all the folks that worked on the project this year. In particular, the Lake Babine Nation folks that we had working with us. Great partners, great nation, very supportive, and great people to work with. A number of them have come back year after year. And have been a pleasure to work with, hardworking people, good to get along with, and our crew and the Lake Babine Nation folks, had a great time up there with all our success. So thanks to all the employees, and then couldn't do this without looking at a few more rocks. So just wanted to show some quick images of the styles of mineralization at NAC. It's a fabulous place to work to see some very photogenic things. There, of course, is our murreatic cavities in this etched, the view of the etched serrate texture, intrusive with the coarser feldspars, like his own feldspars like that one, and the murreatic cavities filled with bornite. can't really see so much the replaced mafic phenocryst, but lots of bornite in that too. This is an example of the quartz stockwork in the stockwork zone. So you just don't see this in other than down there so far. I'm not saying we can't find some more of this up to the north. I think there's a good possibility we'll, but that's kind of what it looks like. You know, beautiful quartz stockwork. There's a bit of bornite in that. It brings lots of good gold. There's another one of reviews. You've seen that one before of this disseminated bornite in the serrate textured intrusion. Again, some veins through there, so that brings nice grade too. But really exciting to see broad stretches of that stuff. And then these awesome replacements of, you know, in this case, bornite with chalcopyrite rimming it and replacing along the presumably the cleavage into bornite. And then, you know, these amazing looking bornite bearing veins, big, chunky, very sulfide rich veins with bleached halos, some very dense disseminated chalcopyrite in some of the intrusions themselves. So amazing looking stuff cut by some iron carbonate veinlets there. And then chalcocite after presumably after bornate. This is kind of on a fracture surface, but spectacular looking stuff. You know, obviously very dense chalcopyrite in that end on view of core. Some crazy looking breccias with partly, you know, copper sulfide infill. And then these cool conglomerates, sometimes with a lot of chalco in the matrix, at a lesser degree within the class, but in other places, you know, you've got a lot of replacement of mafics and heavy disseminations in the class, and maybe less chalcopyrite in the matrix. Still there, of course. So great looking in that, and then you know, in places some of these anhydrite rich veins that bring in really good gold, along with chalcopyrite, obviously, and molybdenite in places. You know, in this case, we kind of drilled down the core, but or down the vein with the core, but you know, it happens sometimes there because a lot of things are steep. And then some things that were kind of a mystery. You know, is this, you know, amygdals filled with chalcopyrite? Who knows? Not me. And then some open space filling with chunky chalcopyrite very late. You know, we're starting to see some of this stuff in the north. So some crazy looking, very high level looking textures. Uh, and that's NAC. Thank you very much.